Well, we have some more calls here. I think we're gonna take. Let's take Michael. Pronouns are he, him in Georgia. It sounds like you want to talk about morality. What is your specific argument?
So I'm an atheist, and this is in response to a claim that I hear from a good number of atheists, particularly on the show. And I guess my first question is, I've heard the sentiment echoed many a time of, even if God was real, he is disgusting and abhorrent, and I would not worship him. Do either of you hold that position?
I would say so.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, it depends on what God, though. Of course, like if we're talking the Christian God, I would say absolutely yes. But any particular God that
I mean the Christian God, and I think that's what I hear echoed by a lot of people. But upon ruminating about that sentiment, I was just thinking about the Christian God and who he is, and I guess what I came to was, if that Christian God is real, that premise being granted, inherently he is the source of all morality. So at that point, who would one be to say that he is a disgusting, immoral being if intrinsically he is the basis of morality?
Well, see, that's the problem is I don't accept the premise, because I mean, no matter what, morality is going to be subjective. So whether it's subjective to us or it's subjective to the deity, but just because a deity says that something is okay doesn't mean that I accept that he's right in thinking that. I guess for me, the issue then still comes down to the idea of him being all perfect, all knowing, all loving, like that combination, like it still doesn't line up. So even if he existed, there's still that problem of which one or more of those is not true about him. And I'm more inclined to, I'm inclined to believe any of them couldn't be true. But if his morality is consistent with that of the Bible, I would not say that he was moral.
Right.
And I agree with what Ben said about Sorry, Michael. That morality will.
I can ask your position.
That morality is forever subjective, simply because even if God exists and even if all these things in the Bible are true, God doesn't know how it feels to slit someone's throat, or God doesn't know how it feels to be raped. So because he did not experience suffering the way humans did, he cannot be the sort of an objective morality for us.
Interesting. So, I mean, on that point, quickly, I guess I would say, and again, I'm an atheist, but I think the argument here, or at least the thing that I struggle with, is the God that I take in this instance is the Christian God who, according to the Bible, is, created everybody, whatever. He is inerrant, he is perfect, he is all good, and he is the source of morality. So, I argue with theists about, they say, oh, you're an atheist, you have no morals, I can look to a higher power. And I say, well, that seems pretty arbitrary. Like I could say, I believe that there's a spaghetti monster up in space that wants me to do nothing but smoke weed all day, right? That we're on the same playing field. But, that aside, if the premise was granted that this God is truly the one true God, then there is a higher morality. And that kind of goes out the window. And, inherently it being the God that scripturally is perfect, all good, all knowing, and the sense of morality, these are a lot of premises to grant, but I'm saying if they are granted, then how is one still able to say that is not moral if, the very foundation of this God's existence, part of his, I guess, essence of being is being the perfect embodiment of morality?
Yeah, I think it's just adopting his subjective view as the correct view. And it's, again, I am not inclined to grant them that when I argue with them.
Right.
But there's an interesting line of thinking that you can go with this. And I'm not a philosopher So my approach is probably slightly different than one you might take, or even one that Adam might take. But thinking about, especially if people bring up a concept of like a conscience, and like, you know what is right and wrong because God wrote it on your heart, what is right and wrong. So that makes it very interesting, because if God's moral compass, if what he tells us is inconsistent with what he wrote on our hearts, like, so if he makes me feel guilty about murder, or makes me feel guilty about stealing, or whatever it is, and then his will, he comes in and says, I want you to do this thing that is directly contradictory to the moral compass I gave you. Did he program us with something contradictory to his own morality, or where does that fall in? Because I mean, we are contradictory in our conscience to what this God wants for us. So I'm not sure what to make of that. Adam, do you have any ideas?
I also have a point to add, which is our sense of morality, especially what dictates our actions to do and not to do, is not necessarily coming from our comprehension of does God exist or not. Like, you don't have to comprehend the existence of God in order to have moral or immoral actions. And I would argue that with wolves, for instance, and if you see a wolf tribe, wolves often go and hunt together. If there is one of them injured or have a broken leg or something, they go and hunt together, they eat their food, and then they bring food to the injured and the weak one. Now, in our concept of good and bad, we can think that this is very moral, this is looking after the weak, and it's a charitable work, it's a moral work. While going and when the wolves are in the mating season and the males fight against each other, we may perceive that as, well, that's bad, a wolf against a wolf, and they're injuring each other. Now, that is all said, has nothing to do with the wolf's ability to comprehend the existence or the non-existence of God. They still do good and bad in our perspective. So my argument is, whether there is objective morality or if it's all subjective, in both cases has nothing to do with you being an atheist or being a believer. And I'm not sure if you want to argue that or you agree with that.
Yeah. I sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. You had additional points.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. I mean, let me just make sure I clarify. I am an atheist. I don't find myself becoming a theist anytime soon, for a multitude of reasons. I guess my question was coming more so from a philosophical standpoint, and I'm sorry. I'm not great with, sorry, who's the, yeah, sorry, Ben, Dr. Ben, student Dr. Ben. You had mentioned the subjective morality, which, again, I don't believe in this God. I don't feel I have any reason to believe in him. But philosophically, if you're talking to a theist who has assumed this premise, philosophically, yeah, a theist who's assumed this premise, then this premise, part of that premise is that this God is objective, not subjective, right? This God is a sense of morality above us, beyond all comprehension. And I guess it feels kind of like a niche case of this specific God is whatever. But, I feel like that's a lot of the callers you guys get. If that God were to be true, for you to not worship him or agree with his sense of morality is you inherently not agreeing with something that is objectively true and just. Again, I don't agree with it, and I don't have any reason to believe in it. But if that were to be the case, that sense of morality and that God is objectively true and just and moral, and how would one disagree with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure, and it's definitely down the philosophy rabbit hole that I don't tend to go down. I'd encourage you maybe even have this discussion with like Secular Rarity or J Mike or somebody who's probably more willing to go down that rabbit hole with you. I mean, from my perspective, I'm more likely to just not grant them that, but I also take a different approach to argumentation. Right. And it just goes to show that everyone has a different way of talking about these issues, and you can be effective in all different perspectives. So I hope that was at least a little bit helpful. Adam, do you have any final thoughts on this call?
No.
All right. Well, I hope it helped a little bit at least, and thank you for calling in.
That was absolutely helpful, pointing me in that direction. And yeah, I mean, I agree that God is an abhorrent piece of garbage, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you for pointing me towards, you know, other people that I might be able to talk to. But you guys have absolutely helped with that, because, you know, you guys have offered some incredible gems towards, you know, thinking towards that question. So I thank y'all. But
yeah, have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
You too. See you.